we're here for another roundtable with two special guests this time. First off, one of our tier 3 members for Working Dragon Mystic, Immortal. You've been with the channel for a while. You've been seen in the Gilded, as well as in the live streams that we do on Sundays. And if I'm remembering right, it's been a while, but you were even in the original Discord before it got deleted.
I sure was.
Okay. So you have been with us almost this whole crazy journey. So we're glad to have you here tonight for this topic. And joining
I'm glad to
us
be here.
for their debut, first time, fans have been bugging me. I never thought it'd personally happen. My wife, Sephi, has joined us.
Hello.
Now, tonight we're going to be talking about perhaps one of the most well-known occult spots filled with myths and legends and stories. We are discussing the Bermuda Triangle. Now, I can remember as a young kid hearing about this from, I want to say it was my uncle. But it's one of those things where you keep hearing the stories just keep getting bigger and bigger and crazier and weirder and weirder. But then I went to Florida. And these people, it's not a myth, it's a reality to them. So, first off, let's start with, where'd you first hear of the Bermuda Triangle in your life, if you remember? Immortal?
God. I think it must have been definitely my family. I want to say like my grandmother, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that she was talking about it. She's seen something on TV about one of the disappearances. And I don't know. The more I looked into it, the more curious I got.
Right. I mean, it's a fascinating story. It really is. It just, you get consumed almost with constantly looking into new findings or new theories.
And there's always new ones.
Always. Sephi, where'd you?
I don't remember if I'd heard of it before this, but my most memorable moment was watching Addams Family movie, and they were going to go to the Bermuda Triangle on vacation. I wanted to go because I love the Addams Family.
Wednesday Addams, who can, yeah. Honestly, as cheesy as it sounds, I think I was really excited that something I was researching and interested in, Wednesday Addams was interested in. It's stupid. It's like, hey, they totally mentioned that thing I'm interested in that no one ever wants to talk about. So I can see that. And honestly, you do have to wonder if that movie didn't spark a lot of people's interest in the Bermuda Triangle. Especially,
definitely.
At least a whole new generation. So, I mean, it's probably most well known for boat disappearances. I think that's what most people equate it to, missing boats and everything. Because especially when I was in Florida, I couldn't find a bar or a pub where there wasn't somebody claiming to be an old sea captain who they had a story. But weirdly, it doesn't seem like there is all that many boats that we can point to.
True, but there is, the first mention, not of the Bermuda Triangle specifically, but that area was with Christopher Columbus. He mentioned his compass going haywire in that area as he was discovering the New World.
That is true. Columbus's journals did mention it. That is absolutely true. Which, that's one of the things for me about the Triangle region, area, whatever you want to call it, that I have found fascinating over the years. Whether you believe in the Bermuda Triangle or not, there are a lot of recorded weird navigational issues. And from a science perspective, that's one of the things I've always found fun about it. Immortal, what's one of the things about the triangle that draws you?
So it's gotta be going back to like what Christopher Columbus he said that one of the things he saw there was actually I think I got the quote here. He's saying that he saw lights going up and down and going like into the water like a candlelight, which at that time we don't have anything that's going to be going up and down in water making a light. There's like no submarines or anything. I'm on the wrong wooden boats.
No, that's true. That is true. Even a hurricane lantern won't survive that.
Yeah.
I don't know though. What if the boat was what was going up and down and it was just the horizon? Some kind of fire off in the horizon.
That's actually an interesting thought there.
That could be.
Because,
Electronic fog maybe reflecting off of it.
yeah.
Hmm.
So instead of thinking of it as technology, you got a point. What if it's that horizon that the boat's going up and down on, making a stationary object look like it's moving? That is a possibility, because there's actually a phenomenon of that. I was actually watching something just the other day where they had a video. It looked like a plane perfectly frozen in the air, unmoving. And when they examined the video, several, I won't say it's physicists, explained the phenomenon. I can't remember the name of it. It's like parabola or something like that, where you moving with something in between you and the other object causes the foreground to make the background look like it's frozen.
I've definitely seen that.
So, because when I first saw the video, I was like, okay, that's really weird. How are you going to explain that crap? But it's a known phenomenon. So I'll be honest, Effie, you're making me feel stupid, because of all the times I've thought of the Columbus candle up and down, I never thought of a campfire.
I saw a video looking at this where somebody lit a fire on an island, and nobody knows where Columbus was at this time,
That is correct.
except that, he thought he didn't know where he was technically. So there could have been a small island with indigenous people with a fire on a hill or something. And it's totally dark other than that fire out into the horizon.
No, that would make sense, because you're right. We don't know exactly where he was because, well, he didn't know where he was. That was kind of the whole fun of his voyages back in the days.
For some reason, he didn't record the GPS coordinates.
I figured, just get your GPS out, flip your phone open, write that down.
Google Maps.
Yeah. World would be a different place, wouldn't it? So that's interesting. Another phenomenon I want to ask you guys about. This one's, everyone likes to talk about this one. Ghost ships.
Yes.
You got two varieties that are reported in the triangle. You got basically the Flying Dutchman variety, but more common, and the ones that I think most people latch onto, is just abandoned ships. They're perfectly functional in every way, just no crew.
Yes, that is absolutely the scariest. I mean, seeing like an old boat, you're like, okay, these guys, this boat's out to sea, it's old, it happened a long time ago. But if you have something so perfectly intact, and even in the case where even the people's belongings were on the boat, if there were pirates or something, they take it all. You know what I mean? Like, why would they leave like all the people's belongings if they're robbing them?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question, because if you're going to hit the ship and you're already breaking international laws out the wazoo, why not take the valuables?
That's a difficult one, and they found ghost ships even to this day, where they're just out in there. And I don't know the details of the ghost ships. I mean, do they still have gas? Were they sailboats? But it seems really weird that multiple ships would not have crew on them.
Yeah. Some of them I know are they have both motors and sails, but some of them have been listed only as sailboats. So you do have to wonder what causes someone to just abandon ship with no signs. And well, I mean, like Immortal, like you was saying, like everything's there, but one of them at least was reported that like the dinner table was set, there were teacups and everything. So it's like what you would expect to see in, like, I don't know, weather's getting crazy or something. There's no disturbances that would show any erratic behavior.
Yeah, that's got to be the most like eeriest thing. And that also even goes to the 1881, the Ellen Austin. So they were going through the triangle and they actually found a ship. So some of the crew had boarded the ship. And during the storm, I think they actually had gotten lost, found the ship again, and the same thing, the people were gone. Their people that they could put on that boat were just gone.
Now, I don't know if that's the ship that I'd read something about, but there was someone that said that there's actually no records, actual official records of anybody being lost from that particular ship. So I'm not sure of the facts on that one. If they actually had anybody actually board the other ship.
That's an interesting point too, because I've been seeing a lot of people trying to check manifest and logs and crews and stuff on some of these, and one potential thought on some of these is, what if a pirate reports it and reports this story, and like even their own crew goes disappearing, so that they could perhaps sell off the goods and stuff. Because it would be
Definitely possible.
because you'd be playing off of a myth already in existence a little bit. So I mean, there's a few facts that in there that we don't know. Like, I don't actually know what ended up happening to the ship. Where did it eventually go, if anywhere? Because if the ship just disappeared eventually and no one ever towed it in, because I think there was one where they decided not to tow it in, they didn't want to lose anyone else. Well, now you have a ship that's theoretically accounted for. It's been reported, but what's to stop them anywhere between that report to just sell it off for parts or in, somewhere else? So it'd be a good cover story.
Definitely.
I'm not saying the triangle didn't do some weird stuff. I'm just saying it would be a good cover story.
It would be. I mean, there's reports of like there's supposed to be around 1,600 ghost ships still out on the ocean. So
That's a
you're
huge
saying
number.
that you found a ship and it was this ship and it's the crew is just missing. Well, who's gonna say anything?
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Now, for me, there's two stories of the Bermuda Triangle over the years that, for me, have always fascinated me. And this surprises a lot of people because I'm afraid of heights. And one is it's an airplane flying from Bermuda to Florida, if I remember correctly. And they fly into a storm. Their instruments go completely wonky. They have no clue where they are. But they see what is essentially a hole. Imagine if you took the eye of the storm and turned it horizontally instead of vertically. And so they decide to try and fly through this tunnel. And when they come out of the storm, they're over Florida. So they made what should have been, I think it was several hour trip in less than a quarter of the time. Now,
Yeah,
stories report that when they measured the fuel consumption and everything, the fuel consumption would account for the claimed time in the air. So using generic numbers, because I don't have notes on it, if it was an 8-hour trip, they used the fuel for 1 hour. But they still got to their destination. This I find fascinating because there are people backing this up. And I've been trying to dig up the exact flight and everything so I could actually see if I could find any air traffic records or something like that to back it up. Because much like ship logs, like we were talking about earlier, air traffic records, those are kept really good.
Mhm.
So I am wanting to work on trying to track this down because that would be a really good piece of evidence for the triangle. And though I love the triangle, I love the stories, the myths, and the legends. I'm honestly the person who believes a lot of weird stuff is happening out there, but I don't believe it's the cursed haunted place it's made to be. I'm just straight up. So when I have something like this that should have a paper trail, I want to find that trail. That's just who I am. Has anyone other than me heard about this weird cloud time warp thing?
Yep.
I guess that's what you'd
I
call
got
it.
notes. I think he called it. Oh, I don't know what I did. This is not my normal tab. I'm sorry. Using
okay.
it for
Was
my
it the
notes here.
one
You
that
have
they
notes?
call it like a time
Bruce.
vortex?
Yes. What's his name? Bruce Jernan, I think
Bruce
his name
Sterning.
was.
All
He
right.
wrote a book about it too, as well. Um, he said that the I finally found it. Okay. After leaving the triangle and he broke the fog and looking at his instruments after they began to work once more, he went 100 miles in only 3 minutes and 20 seconds. So like half an hour about schedule. What that thing said.
Just
What the
yeah, that
History
sounds like
Channel
it.
says. So he thinks that on top of the crazy tunnel of the fog, it's this electronic magnetic fog that kind of hugs to it. Obviously, you got an airplane, got metal stuff and everything. And he said that he experienced what he felt was zero gravity propelling him.
Almost like a
So
rail
if he
gun.
had, yes, so if he has hit this and he keep, you know, and then he just like keeps going, there's no resistance, he's gonna go incredibly fast.
That's an
Wow.
interesting. Yeah, that is really neat. 'Cause, I mean, I'll be honest. I scientifically, it sounds impossible, but at the
Yeah.
same time, it sounds probable. If you want to use MythBuster techniques or terminologies. Um, and as far as electromagnetic fog, technically science hasn't proven it exists, but it hasn't proven it doesn't exist.
Mhm.
They're even trying to work to replicate it because they figure it's probable enough, so they're wanting to try and replicate it.
Mhm.
They're kind of categorizing it almost with ball lightning. Like we know ball lightning exists. We have
Mhm.
no clue how it functions. We have no clue how it happens. And we know it's extremely rare, but we
Mhm.
at least know it exists. So they're kind of putting it in that category. It's just we can't prove it exists yet, but it is a probable. So I think for me, on the way my brain works, I think those are good directions to go. And the concept of it working almost like a bullet train makes some sense
Mhm.
if you can generate the energy.
Yeah.
So,
They
I think
actually
it's
a theory.
what
Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead.
go ahead.
Okay. So they tried. A theory was it was like solar flares or solar winds that had given charge to it because of where it is on the Earth. I'm not sure, to be honest. But when they thought that it was going to be high enough and they went out, they experienced the magnetic fog. Whether they were correct on their theory, I don't know.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's weird that this is the only instance that we know of.
Right.
Mhm.
If
This
it
is a
was
very isolated one. Which is one of the things that I've noticed about this one. This one is a very isolated one. Which some people's thought process is it's so isolated that this rare phenomenon makes it more profitable. That's one thought process. The other point is it's so isolated and such a perfect storm of circumstances, it seems unprobable. So it really is, it's one of those darned if you don't, damned if you do kind of situations. But I found it fascinating. But growing up where I did, especially with my stepdad, one of the big ones for me to research and read about always had to be Flight 19. And honestly, I think this is the one most people think of when they think of the Bermuda Triangle. Because this one beats a lot of the odds. You got an entire grouping of military pilots. They take off, they're on the go, they get lost, they disappear. No one knows where they're gone. We still ain't found them. It's crazy town. Have y'all heard about this one? Oh, that's a bird.
Yes.
Okay, Cynthia.
Oh, yeah.
I know you're military. You've heard about it. You probably cut your teeth on it. They probably told you about it while doing push-ups. That would be me. Let me tell you a dead down story. Get down, give me 20. That's the Marines, though. You're not a Marine.
No, Flight 19 has a lot of unanswered questions because they haven't found them. It's 5 planes, 14 men, and they went out and they started their training exercise. They actually were doing great. They got to where they were supposed to go. They released their practice bombs where they were supposed to, because it was all a training flight. And then they made a turn, and somehow or another, the lead guy, the Lieutenant Taylor, they have the comm logs from it, so they were still within comm range and everything. Thought he was over the Florida Keys instead of in the Caribbean in the Bahamas, and both of his compasses were not working. Now, a lot of people talk about magnetic disturbances with this, but
Right.
it was not just his magnetic compass. He had a gyro compass at this time. In 1945, they'd been using it for a little while. In that particular plane, especially, I've seen where they have shown where both compasses are, but he said both of his compasses were not working.
Yeah. And that's actually an important point that I think a lot of people, it's not overlooked. They just don't know. Because most people, when you ask them how a compass works, they're going to say magnetic north. Most people assume compasses are magnetic, GPS is satellite. They don't realize there's
That's
things
true.
in between. The gyro compass doesn't rely on magnetic north. I don't know exactly how it works. I just know it doesn't rely on magnetic north. So the fact that you have both of these malfunctioning, first off, that's got to be a bad day's luck. Somebody stepped on every crack, walked under every ladder, broke every mirror, and apparently kicked a leprechaun. Because seriously, and if you've ever been away from shore, it is so easy to not know which way is which if you don't have a way to get that bearing. But for Flight 19, I mean, Zephyr, you're right. There's so many questions we don't know. We don't have the answer to. And a lot of people's like, well, you know, the government's going to cover it up. The government's going to brush it under the rug. The problem is, what do you want the government to say officially when there's nothing to say? I mean, what's the good answer there? That's always been my question. And
They don't have any facts. They didn't find the planes. They can't say if there was mechanical failure. They can't
right.
say.
And
They don't know.
Right. And that's what they've said. They've released that statement.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, now, don't get me wrong, I got my issues with everybody on the planet, so I don't blindly trust anyone, but I think they gave the right answer based on the information they had. Let's go with that. But it gets weirder, don't it?
Yes.
Before we get
Um,
weirder, do you have anything to say about the current part of it, Immortal?
Yes. So, right, this happened after World War II.
Yes.
So these gentlemen had probably been like obviously seen action and were trained immediately to be the best that they are, obviously. And for them to be so skilled and then this to happen to them is just insane. Like the conditions must just be that crazy that these extremely experienced fighters they just got lost. And then even the plane that one of the planes they sent to rescue them that got lost too. They're
And
like,
that's where it
all
gets
right, we're gonna
weirder.
go find these guys. They come back with half the plane. And they're like, what? Where'd they go?
so I learned some facts about that. Well, that plane that was supposed to be a rescue that went out after them was a known propensity for fire. This was considered a flying gas tank because of how often they caught on fire.
Wow.
So it's commonly believed that exploded. And there's actually a report from a merchant vessel. I don't know how long after that they reported this, but that they saw a fireball and an oil slick. But then again, it's not been found, so it's not been confirmed that that was it. But it's a possibility because that was 1945, highly likely to catch fire.
Okay, so it's going to be late, so we can all point and laugh, but Ronaldus is thinking about joining us.
Well,
We'll make sure that's recorded when I put that in here if he does jump in. I told him make sure you're ready because we're recording. So you better be ready to be on screen.
His hair's got to look good.
Yes, thank you for that. But yeah, I mean, go ahead, Seth.
I was gonna say, although not finding anything doesn't really raise a lot of red flags because there are shipwrecks not found in the Great Lakes. And Lake Superior is only, is it 30,000 square feet around there? And the Bermuda Triangle is around 500,000 square
Right,
feet.
right, right. And that's a valid point because if you're looking at surface area, the Great Lakes is a lot easier to search surface area wise than the sheer surface area. Though one thing I was thinking about between those two, weather conditions like storms and whatnot might occasionally make it rougher. And as someone who grew up in the South with muddy water and has seen Bermuda water, they're not the same animal. Like the fact that you can see the bottom weirds me out and it's beautiful at the same time. And he's trying. But so there's a part of me that wonders if another aspect is the topographics of the bottom and the water and the weather. But you would still think that a much smaller area would be easier to search still. You'd think it. And he made it. Does his hair meet your approval, Immortal?
Absolutely.
All right.
Never disappointed.
Sorry
Small
about
power
that.
outage, but he joined us after all. If he
We
disappears,
got there
you know why.
eventually.
Power went back out. So
Right.
we're going through some of the basics. Some ghost ships. We're talking about Flight 19. Seffi actually brought up the fact that the Great Lakes has over 500 missing ships, was it?
No, actually, there's some actual contention about that. I hadn't brought this up yet, but the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum claims to be around 6,000, but there's some people that think there's around 25,000 just missing ships in the Great Lakes.
Ooh.
And they're a lot smaller than the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah.
See that That's just crazy to me. But it is easy to lose something in the water. It really is.
And I mean, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, a lot of these shipwrecks have been found, but there are still some that haven't been found, just like in the triangle.
Right.
Right.
Right. And actually, Sephi, you asked me a question earlier today that I remember, like, you weren't looking at me when you asked it, but I wished you had, because you asked and I looked up and I was like, because I really didn't know the response to the question. Like, I had a knee-jerk reaction, but then my brain started thinking, it's like, no, that ain't right. And the question was, if a ship is thought to go down in the Bermuda Triangle, but is found outside the Bermuda Triangle, is it a Bermuda Triangle incident? Right? This is what she
Like-
does to me daily.
Like, what if they found Flight 19 wrecked on Florida's coast?
I have no idea.
Right.
That would suck. That's what
That would
is.
suck. And it's one of those things where the best I can figure is it depends on the person you're talking to and how they rationalize it in their brain. It's the triangle took them out, or they started in the triangle. The triangle is what got them over here, so it's a triangle thing. Or
Yeah, 'cause
no, we
it also-
lost it. We just blame the triangle because it's our scapegoat. So
Right. Because there's a potential that, because let's say it was some phenomenon that's common in the area that were to cause the crash or whatever it ends up being, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's relegated specifically within a cutout boundary. I'd imagine there's probably overlap from the stuff that has been described in the area,
yeah. And
but it also could be a whole bunch of other stuff.
right, it really can. And I think, and I said it earlier, Born, that I think most of the triangle falls into perfectly explainable stuff.
A lot of it
Pumped up
does.
like that. But I've still never lost my fascination with it. And you do have to wonder what's going on out there. And one of the things that, like, I saw talked about early on in my research was rogue waves.
Mm.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
for the
I've
longest
heard that
time,
come
people's
up
like, those don't exist. It's a myth. These sailors don't know what they're talking about. They were drunk. They don't know. That was pretty much the consensus.
Mhm.
However,
Like mermaids.
Right.
almost like mermaids, because now we've confirmed rogue waves.
We're still working on mermaids, though.
Yeah, we're still working on mermaids.
Never give up.
I know a
on
lot of people that when she said like mermaids, they're like, can't do the Born face. I'm sorry, I tried. That's the best I can do.
No,
There
it
we
was
go.
in the same category until the mid-90s. Rogue waves were in the same category with mermaids and kraken and everything. Scientifically, they
Right.
were like, no.
Right. And they started pelting a oil rig, wasn't it?
Hmm. There was 40-foot waves hitting this oil rig like consistently.
Right.
And
that
then
was their
suddenly,
standard.
out of nowhere, a 90-foot wave just came out and hit it.
Rolled a crit on them. Just
Maximum damage.
Get that nat 20 in there.
yeah, gotta get. So, I mean, we have confirmed the existence of these things. And weirdly, that is why I love science and the occult, because you're researching these things that a lot of things have been proven. There's
Lot
still
of
a lot
them.
of things out there.
Right.
But
They
that constant thought of what if?
Right.
now rogue waves are thought to be the culprit in some of these, like I think it's the Cyclops.
Yes, yes.
heard of
the
that one?
Cyclops. That was a shipping ship of some kind, cargo ship of some kind, wasn't it?
It had a big load of ore in it
Right.
in 1918. And they reported fair weather last transmission, and then no distress calls. They just never showed up.
Mhm.
This is actually one of those I wonder about that's considered a Bermuda Triangle incident, but there's no proof that it disappeared in the triangle. It just never arrived.
There you
It's
go.
true.
There you go.
Yeah. Unconfirmable
there's-
until they find a wreckage. And you know,
Mhm.
if it straddles that line somewhere, it's like, is it? Is it not? We don't know.
Yeah. And
Well,
you
also
know,
with the Cyclops. Ooh, I'm
go ahead,
sorry.
Immortal. Go ahead.
What I read was that here I'm gonna go to my notes. That they're actually reported that the ship was overloaded and had a cracked cylinder, and it was recommended for them to repair the ship. And then it was after that, and they went out, is when it had gotten lost. So maybe it was the ship that it was just not up to snuff enough, and they were just trying to get it out there too quick.
Engine could have gone
Well,
down.
I-
It could have got drifted off to God knows where.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very possible.
They could have been tap dancing with penguins before it was over.
Let's say something goes wrong and it's passing through the Bermuda Triangle or probably somewhere along its course, but then it doesn't sink and it drifts off and you find it somewhere in like Chile. Is it still a Bermuda Triangle incident?
I'm gonna say no. It never entered the triangle. I'm sorry. That don't even hit the record. I'm sorry. That's like blaming the Bermuda Triangle for a ship that sinks in Australia. It just no, that don't work.
Well, if its course is supposed to take it through there, but it's just drifting all that way.
Okay, the Bermuda Triangle must be the most antisocial spot on the planet.
I don't know. According to what was said earlier, it sounds like the Great Lakes are getting to that number.
Well, actually, that's an interesting point that Immortal, you brought it up to me earlier this week.
Mhm.
And this is something I've been aware of, but a lot of people don't talk about. The Bermuda Triangle, if you actually look at disappearance, shipwrecks, planes, and all this, it wouldn't even hit the top 10 of positions where things go missing.
No.
It's just the most famous.
Yeah, it's just the most well known.
And with a name like that, I mean, sounds cool. Also, let's be honest, Bermuda's freaking gorgeous. I mean, if you know, like they talk about the Alaskan Triangle. All right, let's consider this. I have to bundle up, dress up, stay warm, fight grizzly bears and mooses and everything else to attempt to explore that. Or I can get me a straw hat, swimming trunks, some flip-flops, and a bottle of rum and call it a day down in Florida. Which expedition would you schedule?
One without frostbite.
Right.
Yes.
I don't even like being hot. And I'd still go to Florida first.
Yeah. And speaking of the name of it, you know where it comes from? Like
Oh, this is
where Bermuda
Yes.
Triangle first was mentioned? A pulp fiction magazine named Orgassi. Fiction. In the 60s.
Yep.
Huh.
Honestly, people ask why I don't talk about the Bermuda Triangle and stuff more on the channel. This is why. If you actually dive in and start researching the triangle, a lot of the occult mysticism and spooky falls away to facts very quickly. That's not to say it's not a fascinating place, but I do think its position as this ooga booga creepy site and mystical nonsense, and you know the way people just pump it up on a pedestal, perhaps the home of the mythical Atlantis, I don't think it deserves it. I'm sorry, I really don't.
Yeah.
That would have been really far for the Greeks to travel.
right.
No kidding.
Right. But the Bimini Road is the reason people want to put Atlantis there. And
Yeah, there is that.
and after all these years in the occult, all the things that I've seen associated with the Triangle and Atlantis, there's a part of me that almost can't read a book if you associate certain things and you have no precedent. Like I remember specifically one book, I'm not going to name the author of the book. I'm going to be that nice at least. This author claims that around the year 2000, A massive Atlantean crystal rose up out of the Bermuda Triangle into the sky, gave a great cosmic flash that transitioned humanity into the next age and lowered and reactivated that cosmic evolution. That was, and they're stating this not as a theory, a thought, or a personal gnosis. They, in the, like, I've read this like 12 times trying to find some verbiage that would put it in those categories, but they're stating it as a fact.
And to clarify for the audience, this isn't a fictional novel.
No, this is a book on occultism. That is actually, it falls under Dragon Magic, is why I read it. Which is why when you all ask me if I can recommend books on Dragon Magic, there's very few of them. And they have no proof. They have no way, nothing. We have no way of crystals floating. We have no flashes that would affect the planet and somebody not notice. I mean, even if Uncle Sam doesn't, all the people that spying on Uncle Sam would notice. I mean, let's be honest. World governments are nosy about each other. Somebody would notice that. And then they'd start blaming each other and the public would know.
So true.
So, I mean, if that happened and I missed it and everyone else slept through it and only one person on this entire planet didn't, I'd be interested to know how. I'd also be interested how we haven't ever found something that big under the water. But aside the points, we did discuss that somewhat with the size and the missing boats. You got me, Sophie. You got me.
Yeah.
You got me. But stuff like that, we do have to consider when you read it, how it's being used and why it's being utilized. But before we go down that rabbit trail, if we do, I got a question for you three. And Born, since you're here, we're going to throw you under the bus because you was late for class.
Oh, how kind.
That's me. I'm just Mr. Compassionate and kind, you know.
Mm-hmm. Would never debate that for any reason.
Do you believe in the triangle? And if so, to what level do you believe in it? Because, like I said, I don't personally believe in it on the mystical basis of it. I do think there's explanations for practically everything. I still find it really mysterious, a lot of things, much like we can't prove electromagnetic fog, but we put it in the probability list. So there, I still think there's a great reason to research it. But when it comes to ghost stories and stuff, I've just never seen anything to make me worry about sailing through it if I ever got a chance.
I was going to say, because the only thing I've really seen that's come up often in areas like that, that's confirmable by any, at least small standard, is just magnetic instruments can kind of go a little weird sometimes. They're not always consistently pointing where they're supposed to be. I don't know what the cause of that would be. Is it on the level of this is some supernatural phenomenon of things disappearing, reappearing, moving around, ghost ships coming out of nowhere? I don't think so. I think on the scale of, if we're going with a 1 to 10, 1 being there's nothing happening, and 10 being the whole thing's a portal into another world, I'm probably on like a 1.
Davy
Maybe
Jones
a 1
didn't do it
point,
in your book, huh?
maybe a 1.5 in some cases, but
I actually would have figured, considering some of mine in your conversations, I might have put you a little higher. So that's actually interesting. Pretty cool. Immortal.
There's been a lot of looking into it since those conversations.
Ah, okay. Crap, I done broken. I crushed his hope.
So it's like there's things that in the triangle that can be explained, like the rogue waves. Like obviously we still can't figure out how to like exactly replicate it, but we know it's there. We know it happens, and we also know there's this algae sargassum. I might be saying that wrong.
Yeah,
That's something that even traps the boats. Yeah. So they trap the boats, and then when it's grouped together, it rots and it actually becomes really noxious. So when guys are thinking like, "Oh my God, aliens," or "Oh, I see this light over here," something like that, they could literally be losing their minds on that.
They could. They really
And
could.
then
Yeah.
for the equipment, so Bermuda is actually mostly made up of magnetite. I think I said that right. And so it's a volcanic island, but unlike other ones that come from like 40 miles deep, this one was from like 400, is what, I'm quoting History Channel, so I hope I got this right. Um, but so like, over time, if the whole island is like has very magnetic mineral and everything, that seriously throws everything off. And even like like sediment and stuff from the island will just naturally spread out across the sea. So, I mean, is it really ghosts or aliens or something? I'm not sure, but are there some actual physical things that we can say, hey, this happens here, it's super weird? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, now to the magnetite one, or that might be no, that's magnetite. Okay, magnetite. I hope I'm saying that right. I did look into that one at one point because that one fascinated me. But what I found out, unfortunately, as at least for boats, and well, I guess it would go for planes too, now I think about it. Magnetite, in order to affect a standard compass, you would have to have such a massive amount of it, and it'd have to be right up against the boat at minimum. So, like, if you're just parked near an island or it's on the shore, that distance, because the distance to a magnet like just crushes its power, becomes a problem. Now, to that, however, which I was talking to someone a while back that knows more about magnets than I do, they said, however, even though magnetite alone technically operationally might not be able to explain it, it could be one part of the equation. There could be other factors acting upon it. But until we know the other factors, we can't say this did it. So even though that by its lonesome, by itself, sailing over just a chunk of magnetite's not going to do anything, and you'd probably need more than an island, due to it being on the seafloor and you being up here. Unlikely. It's still a component, and that's why I said even more so for planes, because they're higher than the boat in most cases, unless it's a seaplane sitting on the water. But so those are things that just because it doesn't look like that's the solution, we should consider it might still be a component to what's causing it. So, but yeah, magnetite is that stuff is some cool stuff. If you ever get a chance to play with it and you got a compass, you can sit there and just make that chase it. It's so much fun. I'm easily entertained. I'm sorry.
Me too.
Sevi, what do you think?
I think that most of the Bermuda Triangle incidents can be explained. There are still a few outliers, though, like the one you were talking about, where all evidence pointed to them being crossing. How long was it? An hour and a few minutes
Yeah.
distance, the plane. There's a few instances, but I don't think these are because they went through that area for the most part. I wonder if some of this stuff might be happening in other places, but because it doesn't have the big shiny letters Bermuda Triangle on it, nobody's paying attention to it. Like they've had a whole 747 disappear over in another part of the world, but there's not suddenly a triangle of unluck right there.
Yeah, it's like I would be very interested to see the massive difference it would take if it happened somewhere between those islands.
Yeah.
And if you look at the incidence of the Bermuda Triangle, it falls off about after we started getting the GPS satellites in the air.
Yeah, it just disappears.
Yep.
That is true. That is true. we've had fewer and fewer and fewer random spooky things, other than those ghost ships, which are still spooky as shit. Because I don't care who you are, a perfectly good sailing vessel just empty with the dinner plate set, that's some creepy. Now, granted, is there some eccentric, rich a-hole out there buying ships, setting them up, and just leaving them there to creep us out? Honestly, if I had the money, I'd do it.
Now,
That'd be a lot of money to throw away.
Don't
See-
understand how petty I can be. I can't. I will go a long way for a practical joke. My wife can confirm it.
yeah. I work on every April 1st. Purposely. So ghost ships, there are some ideas for like, especially sailing ships. Because there are weather patterns that actually put out that there's no wind. So you will be stuck in the middle of the water and no way to go anywhere.
Mhm.
The older ships, before we had the motors in them and everything. So sailing ships, I could almost understand, because when you're stuck out there for so long, you go a little crazy.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't have water and you start drinking salt water. It's like a death
Yeah.
sentence.
And then on
So-
top of that, Immortal, you had mentioned the kind of algae and other stuff that builds up in those areas. I mean,
Yeah.
even when you got the steam powered ships where you had the rotating
Oh, that's just going to kick it up.
drums,
Yeah.
like it would
Yeah.
it would clog up so much in those things. And then,
Yeah.
noxious fumes on top of that. It's like, yeah, people go nuts with that shit too.
They might have gone swimming. Like, I got all this water over here. Why not? It looks good. Like,
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
and even
Another thing
Christopher
could
Columbus
be
got stuck.
Another thing could be, what if they were getting a little crazy? They found an island, they got off the ship, and they didn't moor it correctly, and it just,
That
it's gone back out to sea.
I know so many old fishermen that have told stories about that kind of crap happening, that is just too probable. And it's not that story like they're bragging about it, because they're telling the story, and their buddy who it happened to is sitting there like, would you shut up? I don't want anyone to know this happened. So, I mean, those things happen. And if you moored it incorrectly, or the tide came in and you weren't expecting it, yeah, that could just yank your boat right out there, and you're just suddenly a castaway.
Mhm. Start talking to a basketball and a bowling pin.
So, I mean, that's actually another great example of what could happen. And that could actually explain a few of the ghost ships.
Not to mention
like
the other
to
weird
think
sightings people would have out there.
the sailors that are going out there or owning these boats, if it's not an eccentric millionaire just trying to scare us, that they're smarter than that. And maybe that's too much faith in humanity. I don't know. But I like to think it anyway. So, okay, so we all seem to be somewhat on the agreement here that the Bermuda Triangle is not the spooky place that it's often made out to be. Which I guess leaves us, we got to talk about it. We're going to have to talk about it, because if we don't, someone in the comments is going to yell at me, and then I'm going to blame Bourne. So, is it aliens?
Yes.
Oh, I haven't had enough coffee today.
Well,
I brought coffee.
We start.
if it's aliens, why there?
Oh, fine. Well, yeah, why there?
I
Because
mean,
honestly, it seems more likely that the aliens are just the things people hallucinated with on noxious gases, or drinking salt water, or heat exhaustion, depending on if they drank salt water and then sat in the sun.
no, that's honestly, if there's a lot of times that's where I would put it up to.
or
I know
or if they
with us
swam to
saying
a
this,
nearby
somebody's gonna be
island
like,
and
the
then drank
government
salt
just
water and did the
confirmed
shit.
biological aliens, and it's like, technically they confirmed unidentified flying objects containing biologicals.
Mhm.
That means anything biological. That could have been an
Right.
unidentified flying thing with a monkey in it.
Yeah, it's like all they said was not human. They did not say it was outside of our world.
So, but again, even though, you know, I tend to poke fun at the alien theories a lot, statistically, it seems unlikely we're alone in the universe. It's just, if I had advanced technology and stuff going by Earth, I'm rolling my windows up and locking the doors because, sorry, it's Corn Creek Woodbine to me. That's all it is. Just get through it as fast as you can and don't look back.
Because I mean, and let's go off on a limb and say you were trying to do some kind of anthropological study. You wouldn't be doing it out in the middle of the ocean where no one's at. You'd be looking at populated areas, not in the middle of the boonies where a lot of these stories like to take place.
Well, and then there's
I don't
the
know. If I'm on a long trip and I want a redneck. He can fix your vehicle.
then there's the you know, idea that they're doing experimentation,
Yeah.
but I think in the history of humans, as much as people say that they've been aliens have been around, I think they probably know all there is to know by
Yeah,
now.
because you'd really only need a small handful of specimens and then you'd be done. You wouldn't have to worry about updating your model for another several hundreds or thousands of years.
I had never considered that. Because you're right. Supposedly, I mean, a lot of these theorists, especially ancient astronaut and whatnot, and the concept they've been studying us, they've been doing it for so long. And in theory, they're so much more advanced than us. And humans have, well, we ain't done a lot.
Yeah.
You figure, wow, I never thought of that.
Now, I
Give me a new
mean,
one for my toolbox. Thank you.
I mean, if they're abducting people and returning them, okay, but then you've got disappearances.
Mhm.
What are they doing? Populating another world? Doesn't
Put 'em
make
in a
much
zoo.
sense.
Put them in
Zoo?
a zoo.
I mean, you only need a couple breeding pairs.
Oh Lord, that's
Excuse
horrible.
me. Seriously though.
That's horrible.
Yeah, no, it's like in all actuality, a small handful out of the population would be more than enough. And then if
But
it
they've been doing it
was,
this long.
yeah, because it's like you're talking about doing all this poking and prodding on like how many abduction stories are there in just the US
Countless.
in the last 10 years. You know, it's a huge number. And let's be honest, if someone is honestly going through all of that just to poke and prod at a few people to put them back in an afternoon, someone's wasting their grant money.
Mm-hmm. I can see that. Now, I will say this
But-
much. I will say,
Mhm.
because there are a lot of instances out there that are credible, very fascinating instances
Mhm.
that, I'll be honest, I can't explain them. I can't. I would like to see a bit more science done on that. So, you know, if you're out there, if you've had one of those experiences or whatnot, we're not discounting it, but
No,
I think the thing
not
is,
discount.
we're skeptical as what exactly happened, and with more information, we could actually bridge that gap. I mean, it may be exactly what people saying, and
That's possible.
Maybe humans are more interesting than we know.
Well, it's possible. I mean, I was just thinking, you know, I don't think that if they were doing that, they'd just pick the Bermuda Triangle
That's
and
true.
start picking
Yeah,
people off boats.
They'd get a much larger sample. And somebody said, now this is one that I found interesting until I went to Bermuda with a bunch of idiots. But everybody's like, well, they're putting subterranean bases down there to hide, and then they launch from there, and that's how we get the USOs, you know, the unidentified submerged objects. And I was like, okay, hiding under the water. Okay, I see where you're going with it. And then I went out there. There's a problem with this theory. Because when I was out there, the water was deep as shit where we were on our particular boat, and I looked down. Guess what I saw? I saw the freaking bottom of the ocean. those waters are some of the clearest freaking waters I have ever seen. If anything is unnatural about that area, it is how clear that water is. It is freaking crazy.
I was gonna say I haven't been in that kind of area specifically, but I've been near there on a vacation or two. Oh yeah, went scuba
So-
diving in those areas. Like you're in the boat, you look down, you just see all the way down.
Right, you don't
which
need the scuba
I
gear,
just-
just look down.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. We had the gear, and we just looked down off the boat, and you just, despite the ripple of the
Yeah.
surface, see
So-
straight to the bottom in full daylight.
You know, as the reigning champion of hide and seek in my family, I can honestly tell you that's a bad place to hide. I mean, that's basically like standing in the yard and going, "Can't see me."
If I can't see you, you can't see me.
So you're gonna have to give me a better theory than that one. So okay, we all, I don't know if we're hopeful aliens are there. I think we all believe statistically probable. And honestly, if they're in the Bermuda Triangle, they're probably there the same reason we are. It's freaking gorgeous, good food and drinks too. Maybe they
It's
just want
possible,
rum.
for sure.
They're flying by Earth. Why is the rum gone?
It's like that could be the reason to abduct
Pull off the
people.
Bermuda.
Where's your
All right. I'd do it. I would totally detour for rum. All right.
You know, that
Um,
would also explain why in some of the in more of the what I call it earlier, boony kind of type of regions, they're interrogating people where they store their moonshine.
That's why they're kidnapping rednecks. They want some white lightning moonshine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I
Can't
know
get
a
this
lot of
anywhere else.
moonshiners.
Tell us where it is.
If I was to tell him, do you think they're just kidnapping people for moonshine? And they'd be like, well, that'd be a compliment. That's how you know your shine's good. You make it all the way to the moon.
Someone's advertising on Epsilon 3A.
Happy's white lightning really good.
Didn't realize
Okay.
to get those
They
commercials
also-
on
Right. They also need the rednecks to fix their ships. You know what I mean? If it comes to breaks down, you give them duct tape and aluminum can, they can make it to Mars.
Oh, yeah.
So-
Yeah, we can get you anywhere. We'll figure it out. Don't ask us how it works, because even we can't tell you how it works. We just know it works. And that's really the only criteria we need. So, okay, we covered the aliens, which really leaves us with one thing. And I don't want to, I mean, we're going a little long here, but I want to touch on it because if we don't, I have a feeling we're going to be coming back. And who knows, questions and comments may get us back to the Bermuda Triangle or on a similar topic later. But I'm going to ask it just because. And even I'm going to try to be nice. So, Sephi, you have to be nice too. What about the mystical crystal, possible cities, interdimensional woo? What do you guys think?
See, that's not where I thought you were going.
Where I thought you were going either, but it's like, okay.
Oh, where do y'all think I was going?
Equally as
I thought
strange.
Atlantis. I don't.
Well, I think it's a little far away from Greece to be Atlantis.
I would
Right.
agree. I would agree with that.
So,
Like if it was going to be
Unless it's
there,
all
it'd
connected
be
under Earth.
yeah, it'd be a lot closer.
but
Yeah.
it's hard to say there's any evidence of mythical crystals.
Yeah. I mean,
mean-
there's really not much like that one thing I
'Cause-
mentioned.
Because, and for the viewers out there, don't take this the wrong way. But in most cases, in similar description to what other things have been believed to appear in said spaces, if you're a person who has been there and seen some shit, more than likely, I'm thinking rotting noxious gas, or heat exhaustion, or you drink salt water. If you've never been there and you've just heard, try to actually go and find out for yourself, because likely what you've heard is someone who was around noxious gas or was heat exhausted or drank salt water.
Okay.
Anyone that has tried to astral project, scry, or soul travel the area. I haven't heard anything about that there.
Yeah, I mean, also, I mean,
I've taken a few astral jaunts in that direction. I haven't found anything.
but unless you can bottle it and prove it, you got to personal gnosis that.
And that's all I really got. And
Yeah.
there's nothing I've found to say there's something else there other than what's already everywhere else.
No, that's fair. That's a fair answer. Immortal, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I guess you could play devil's advocate and say because either Atlantis or maybe a comet, which would be the reason why it would be so deep, and Bermuda from the volcanic island going so much deeper. But did it all happen with a crystal or a comet and magic? I don't know. I mean, could it be a possibility if you want it to be? But until it's like you got the hard evidence, like, oh, we found a bunch of crystals down here, or oh, we found like meteorite at the bottom. It's just a weird place to be at Earth.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fun story, but
Yeah.
I probably could say that about most spiritual or religious texts because I love theology. The way that people they explain their environment, it does give you an insight into people. But there's a reason people don't like me from time to time. It's because I'm overly logical. It's like, that's great. Prove
In a
it.
similar boat myself.
Yeah. And again, that's one of the reasons why, until it came to a roundtable concept, I knew I couldn't do Bermuda Triangle solo. It's just like, guys, I'm just gonna.
I need someone else to take the heat with me if I'm going to talk about
God, it's like,
because if it's just me, it's going to be a firestorm.
And I volunteered.
yes, you did, and we're glad to have you. Thank you, Sevi. What's your thoughts
What, on the crystals?
on the
Like-
interdimensional, different worldly concepts and crystals, Bermuda Triangle related?
So not specifically Atlantis, because you know my thoughts on that.
Right, not Atlantis.
The
We could probably do a whole roundtable on Atlantis.
Probably could.
so interdimensional crystals. Well, it seems like if you're going to have an interdimensional crystal, you're going to have a location. So are we talking there's a crystal at every point of the triangle? Are we talking there's a crystal in the center? Are we talking about there's multiple crystals everywhere and no one has come across them at all?
Yeah. It's
It
popped up
seems
in
just
different-
like a throwaway thing.
yeah.
Like, oh, it's this.
Yeah, and see that may be the problem I have with it because it just seems like a. Would scapegoat be the right word for it?
Would what be?
Like you scapegoat because you
Scapegoat.
have this story,
Kind
you
of.
can't prove it, you can't explain it, so you just throw this thing out there that tries to explain why you can't explain it.
Well, what it sounds like when someone describes this kind of thing, it's almost like someone, let's say, created an astral sanctum or went to some other plane, with normal means of astral projection or soul travel, and then didn't know how to explain that,
I've
or
actually wondered that too. I've wondered that too.
or tried to ascribe more meaning to it than is actually there. As it's very common nowadays for someone to say, I went and saw a wolf running across the sky in a brief vision, so clearly it must be Fenrir trying to talk to me. And it's vague at best, and someone that tries to associate some meaningful something to it.
Probability. It is. I heard one person, and I don't know if I agree with this, but it's a thought that a lot of people overreach because life is boring.
Mhm.
and they're trying to make it more fantastical. And
That's exactly what I mean.
I have a
Yeah.
problem with that because I have a hard time getting bored. My life has been cray cray. I don't need a list of new things. In fact, I think me being bored is perhaps Seffi's greatest fear, because usually if I'm bored, if she's home, it's let's go bug Seffi.
Yeah.
But there's so much in the world that still is so extremely fascinating that that feels like a stretch to me.
Well, a lot of the people who are trying to assign a lot more fantastical notes onto themselves, happenings in their life, yada yada, are usually folks who don't do a lot.
I guess that's fair. So just to be clear, we're not knocking you if you believe these things, because honestly,
No.
I mean, Bourne brought up a good point, like traveling to an astral sanctum. We can't prove astral sanctums exist. We can't prove the planes exist. When we're having these conversations, we're talking about what we can prove, what we can find, what we can study, because we want to understand our world far better and what's happening here. And at least me, I think that honestly makes you a better mage. The more you understand this, the better you can push those boundaries in your practice. So hopefully, if anything else from this conversation you take away is follow those notes, follow that research. Like Seffi did, track down the freaking log on the boat, because she's right. There's shipping manifest, there's crew manifest, all this stuff exists for these boats. But I cannot remember anyone telling me they track those down half the time, if not more than half the time. And we are finding there's a lot of boats that supposedly disappeared that never existed. There's no record of the boat ever existing. Those probably an old fishtail.
A lot of the Bermuda Triangle stories come from a book it's a fiction book. I think it's called the Bermuda Triangle. But it's fiction.
So a lot of this myth started from a fiction, and that's kind of interesting. That really is. So yeah, all right. Real quick, we'll get some closing thoughts if you got them. Before we close, Immortal, we'll start with you.
Can we really say that this is this crazy mystical place? There's aliens and there's ghosts and all sorts of things going wrong. I mean, we can't prove that. Do we have some physical things like the sargassum, the magnetite that could attribute to some of these disappearances? Yes. So, it's definitely an interesting place to be on Earth. Strange things do go on.
Yeah. All right. Born oldest.
Well, it's one of those disappointing things in life where you have a really hopeful hypothesis on an area or a given phenomenon, and
sorry about that.
As you look into it, your heart slowly withers as you realize, oh no, everything I wanted is gone.
At least your hair didn't fall out.
Huh?
At least your hair didn't fall out.
Yeah, give it a couple minutes. But no, I originally wanted, I hoped desperately that this area was some mystical phenomenon of portals to other realms opening and closing and all that kind of stuff, where you see things disappear or reappear later on in a different spot or all that stuff. But through looking into different things that have been claimed to happen there, like you said, some of these things never happened at all. Some of these things were hallucination or a weird instrument malfunction, but that's it. And the wreckage was found, so clearly it wasn't swallowed up by the ether. The ghost ships are weird.
There's still plenty of weird stuff happening out there.
There's still weird stuff, but none of it really leads to what I was hoping was there.
Fair. That's fair.
And you know, this other stuff with the crystal dimensions or aliens popping up, I have yet to find any proof of it one way or another.
It could be your little
So-
flag at the end of the green, you know, it's just your little bit of hope down there to
And-
keep looking.
Until we have something to prove otherwise, it's a hope.
That's what it
That's
is.
all it will be until that's found.
Okay. Okay. I usually go last, so Seffi.
So I still find the Bermuda Triangle fascinating because of the things that we don't have answers for. I like finding the answers to all of those things, finding the little things like, well, it's likely that the rescue plane exploded. So then you know what the real mysteries are. And I'm actually still looking forward to when they find these these planes, these ships, but not just in the Bermuda Triangle. I want to hear about the ones that are lost in other places too.
Indeed.
And so I'm not disappointed at all to find out a lot of this stuff. And if there's mystical crystals down there, I really hope that somebody takes a picture of one, because I
Yeah.
would like to see,
I would too.
and I'd like to
I'd
know
love-
what they do.
I'd love to see some shimmering multi-dimensional crystal wash up on shore in
Awesome.
Florida, you know?
Awesome. And you know
Would be
what?
great.
I'm kind of in a similar spot with you on that, Seffi. One thing that you definitely do better than me is you have a curiosity that is just curiosity. You just want to know, you just want to look into it. You don't care what the answer is, you just want the answer. I tend to get more frustrated. You don't. You just enjoy the search, like you're out there spinning and it's windy and you're just, ooh, and you have fun with it. And that's great. I love it. I wish I could do it without getting frustrated as much as I do. But I agree with you absolutely. I still find it extremely fascinating because we don't know what's going on. Why did two compasses and one of them is not even reliant on magnetics, go bad? The improbability. Where are the boats? Where are the ghost ships coming from? These are questions I seriously want to know. They got my interest piqued. So even if we can debunk it, if you want to say it, some of the disappearances or some of the ships or some of the stories, there is still so much out there happening that is so fascinating that even taking that layer off, it's actually, to me, it's almost made it more interesting. And what I mean by that is when you have this mystical, unexplained ghost story, it stops there. That's where it stops. That's just how it is. But when you remove that layer and you start seeing all the inner workings and all these things that have a real world explanation, but is still we can't really nail down, that's when it really starts getting more interesting for me. But that's just how my brain works.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, this has been a blast. Immortal, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We may have you back at another time for another topic. We will see what happens, see what trouble we get
I'd love
into.
to.
Hopefully, Born will make it on time.
You know, hopefully my power doesn't blow out again at a worst time.
Yeah. And of course, Seffi, thank you for joining us. I know the viewers have wondered if you existed for a while, so it's actually good that you decided to jump in. I didn't actually think it would happen. She made a liar out of me. Because I flat out told him during a live stream, that ain't happening ever.
History hath
remember.
been made.
It has. So hopefully you will join us again sometime. It's been nice having you.
Yeah.
And everyone, thank you. This has actually been fun. I weirdly did not think we'd fill 30 minutes with this. I really didn't. And yet it seems we were able to kick a lot back and forth on this more than I thought.
Mhm.
So, yes. And if you have any questions, if you've seen any sightings or you've done anything that you would like us to look into, because we're all still very, very open. Or if you have information on dimensional crystals or portals, be sure to tag Bornaldus in it.
Yes.
He's looking for
He-
hope.
I want my Stargate.
Or just something you'd like us, because we do. I think everyone here still loves the Bermuda Triangle vastly.
Mhm.
It's not something that it's like, oh, it's overplayed. No, we still love it. Definitely let us know, because I'm always looking for new things to look into. And or if you have a topic you would like us to cover, drop that in the comments below as well. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you're notified anytime we do another one of these crazy things, or we go live, or we just release our normal Tuesday videos. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining me tonight. It was a blast. Take care and good night.